Hi, I'm Gabrielle Denman, and this is going to be my video on parent training for the functions of behavior and more. So I'll start with an introduction to behavior management. So behavior management explains behavior using science and designs interventions to manage behavior that are based on evidence-based practices that decrease challenging behavior and increase beneficial behaviors, ultimately with the goal to improve quality of life for a client and their family. So part of the foundation of behavior management are the functions of behavior, and there are four functions of behavior. The first is sensory/automatic, which feels good to do for the person engaging in it. That's why they engage in it. An example of that for a client with autism could be engaging in self-injurious behavior, such as headbanging, because it feels good to them. It provides them some sort of sensory pleasure. And then the second function of behavior is escape. So it would remove the person engaging in the behavior from a situation that they think is unpleasant. And an example would be someone engaging in a tantrum as soon as they're presented with homework to try to escape having to do the homework. And then the third function of behavior is attention, so access to people or interactions. An example of that would be if a mother is trying to cook dinner and a child engages in a tantrum to try to get her attention. Um, And the fourth function of behavior is tangibles, so access to preferred items or activities. And an example of that would be engaging in a tantrum to gain access to a toy that was removed. So, say the mother takes the toy and the child immediately engages in a tantrum in order to try to get there to secure the return of that tangible item. Um, so, tangibles are the fourth function of behavior. I'm going to show a quick visual that very simply illustrates the four functions of behavior in an acronym that can help you remember them. So, SEAT is the word, SEAT is the acronym. So, S for sensory, E for escape, A for attention, T for tangible. So, that's one way to remember the four functions of behavior is this acronym SEAT. And the four functions are really critical to behavior management and behavior analysis. So this can be a really good tool to remember something that's really critical to everything that you'll learn about behavior analysis. The other thing that's important to remember about the functions of behavior is that any behavior can serve more than one function at the same time. So a tantrum could be a child can engage in a tantrum to engage access to it to gain access to attention as well as access to a toy if, say, their mother walked away during playtime with a toy that they had been playing with. So they might engage in a tantrum partly to get their mother's attention again and partly to try to secure the return of that tangible, the toy. So behaviors could have multiple functions. Now, extinction. Extinction is a procedure by which the reinforcement that had followed a behavior in the past is no longer provided, and as a result of this, the behavior decreases. So an example of this could be if the child starts tantruming every time you take a certain toy away, and you used to give the toy back. Extinction would be now taking the toy, the child engages in the tantrum, but you don't give the toy back. So that would be an example of extinction. You stop providing access to the tangible that is what they were tantruming for. So that's an example of extinction. And then a replacement behavior is an appropriate behavior that serves the same function for the client as the challenging behavior that it was intended to replace, which allows the client to meet their same need or desire in a now appropriate way. So an example of this would be teaching a child who tends to take toys from siblings or peers, just like taking toys out of a sibling or peer's hand, teaching them to instead ask, like, oh, can I play with that? So they still can get access to the toy by just asking for it the same way that they would have by grabbing it. So teaching them how to ask would be the replacement behavior for grabbing. Now we have generalization, which is the ability to display the same behavior across settings with different people and at different times. So an example would be like, again, if a child is taught, if you teach a child at home during in-home therapy to ask their sibling for a toy before they take it, and then that child then goes to school and asks another peer in their class for a toy instead of taking it, That's an example of them generalizing that skill to now the school appear instead of a sibling and at a different time. And like just a different context, a different situation, not during ABA therapy, during school time. So that would be like a great example of a really robust generalization of a skill. And then maintenance is a continued ability to perform a skill over time once all teaching has ended. So an example of this would be if you had a token board that you use for a child every time they completed a homework assignment, and you slowly faded away the use of that token board and didn't use it anymore, and the child still completed their assignments on their own. That would be an example of maintenance. Now we have reinforcement, and there's two types of reinforcement. The first is positive reinforcement, which involves presenting a motivating / reinforcing item or activity. So the person after the desired behavior, to the person after the desired behavior is exhibited, which makes the behavior more likely to happen in the future. An example of that would be if a child does their homework and you praise them, and that makes them more likely to do their homework in the future. You praising them would be an example of positive reinforcement. Then negative reinforcement is the second type of reinforcement, and it involves an aversive or negative outcome being removed as a result of a behavior, and the behavior that led to the removal will increase in the future. So an example of negative reinforcement would be if a child doesn't clean their room, and you yell at them, and then they start cleaning their room more. The yelling acted as negative reinforcement for increasing the behavior of cleaning their room, because the child desired to have the yelling removed. So that makes an example of negative reinforcement. And then we have punishment. So positive punishment occurs when something is added to the situation after the behavior occurs, and then the behavior decreases. So both of those things have to happen in order for it to be positive punishment. And an example of that would be like yelling at a child for bad behavior, and then their behavior decreases in the future. So the yelling would be positive punishment. And the second type of punishment is negative punishment, which occurs when something is removed after the behavior occurs, and then the behavior decreases. So say a boy is hitting other students, and then you take away some tokens from his token system, and that decreases the amount that he hits. So taking away the tokens would be the negative punishment. Okay, and that's my video on the functions of behavior and more for parent training. Thanks.